In this problem, we want to solve a quadratic equation using the technique of completing the square. We're asked to complete the square on the quadratic equation 2x squared minus 3x minus 4. First of all, what we want to do is get all the x terms, this binomial, by itself. Now we have 2x squared minus 3x equals 4. Okay? Now that we have this binomial by itself, one important thing to remember is that in order to complete the square, we need the leading coefficient to be 1. The best way to get that to happen is to divide everything by 2 in this case. So I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by 2. Doing this gives me x squared minus 3 halves x equals 2. Now I'm all ready to complete the square. What I have to do in order to complete the square, remember, is to take half of the middle term and square it and add it here and then to this side of the equation. So let's write that down here. 1/2 of negative 3 halves is minus 3/4. Okay? But remember, what we want to do is square it, and that is what we will add to both sides of the equation. So this gives us 9/16. So that's exactly what I'm going to add to both sides of the equation, 9/16. If I forget to add it to one side of the equation, I'm no longer dealing with the same equation that I started with. So my answer will be wrong. The nice thing about completing the square is that now I'm in a position to factor this. It turns out this is a perfect square trinomial. So we can factor this left-hand side of the equation. This gives us x minus 3/4 quantity squared. And the reason I was able to factor that so quickly is because I know that I will always put half of the middle term right here in this spot. Okay, on the right-hand side of the equation, I now want to combine these terms. I have 2 plus 9/16. I can write this 2 as 32/16 plus 9/16. Of course, in order to add fractions, all I do is add the numerators once the denominators are the same, which they are in this case. So I now have x minus 3/4 quantity squared equals 41/16. Using the square root property, I can then get rid of this squared term and eventually isolate the x. This essentially comes down to taking the square root of both sides. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and now I have x minus 3/4 equals the square root of 41/16. I can't forget, however, to put a plus or minus out front here because I will forget a solution if I do that. All right, let me make some more room over here. Okay. Now we're in a position to isolate the x. If I add 3/4 to both sides, I get x equals 3/4 plus or minus, and now I can go ahead and simplify this radical. Remember, we don't want to leave a fraction underneath the radical. So this simplifies to the square root of 41/4 because the square root of 16 is 4. So my solutions are then 3/4 plus the square root of 41/4 and 3/4 minus the square root of 41/4. If you'd like, of course, you could write this as one fraction here since they have the same denominator, and here as well. So this is how to complete the square, and we have come up with both solutions, which you can, of course, check by plugging in to the original equation.